Welcome to the Secret Sauce of Outsourcing podcast that's dedicated to making you better at working with OFS, Online Filipino Specialists. This is episode 348, Typhoons in the Philippines. So as I record this, which it's right now in November, typhoon season is on the way out. Typically in the Philippines, typhoon season is June to September. But I wanted to talk about it because it's an issue in the Philippines. The Philippines typically gets about 20 typhoons hitting the country each year. So just to put that in perspective, typhoon is the Pacific version of a hurricane. So in the US, we talk about hurricanes. So hurricanes hit Florida and they hit the Caribbean and they hit the eastern seaboard of the US. And in the Pacific, it's basically the same thing. We just call it a typhoon. Now in the Philippines, typhoons typically originate out in the Pacific Ocean and then they move eastward over the Philippines. They'll typically hit the central or the northern area of the Philippines. So in the Visayas or Bicol or northern Luzon are the areas where typhoons will typically hit. They don't often hit Mindanao or Davao, the southern part of the Philippines. With 20 typhoons hitting each year, some are obviously stronger than others, the Philippines is remarkably good at recovering from these. However, they still have really devastating events sometimes. So in 2013, over 6,000 people were killed by Typhoon Yolanda. And when this happened, it was a really big deal. Multiple people on my team were affected. We didn't lose anybody, but multiple houses were destroyed. Entire communities were flattened. It was a really big deal. I was just looking at a Wikipedia page about this. In 1911, the wettest typhoon ever happened, which dropped 87 inches of rain in a 3-day period. Yeah, 87 inches. That's over 2 yards or 2 meters of rain in 3 days. Was that devastating? Yeah, that destroyed cities. So now, how does this affect you and your workers? Well, it depends on where they are. So I have a lot of people in the southern part of the Philippines, on Mindanao, in Davao. And those people typically don't have a lot of effect from typhoons. They'll still have flooding, they still have lots of rain, but the destruction isn't common there. But I also have a lot of people in Cebu or in Iloilo or in other parts of Luzon, and yeah, they get affected when a typhoon hits their area. It's not always as destructive as these that I've talked about, but it always affects them. It always makes the power go out for a few days, which means the internet's out for a few days. Often, houses will be damaged, communities will be hurt. When this happens, we typically send money. That's our typical reaction to it is, how can we help you rebuild? What can we do? Here's some money to help rebuild your house or to help rebuild your neighbors or to help out with whatever you need. Now, like I said before, the typical season for typhoons is like June to September. So during the US's winter, that's not really an issue. In spring, it's typically not an issue. It's usually an issue during the summer. And this last year was not particularly bad, but you just never know what's going to happen. So as you work with people in the Philippines, I don't suggest you try and avoid the regions where typhoons hit. I don't feel like it's worth the sacrifice of not finding the correct person for you just because they live in Bicol or wherever it is. I wouldn't pass on someone just because of where they live. You may not get a hurricane, you may not get a typhoon every year. It may not even happen every few years. It may be every 5 years that you'll get a typhoon that will affect them. And it may not be terrible, but it's going to affect them at some point. And so as an employer, you just need to be prepared for that and need to know this is an issue when you hire in the Philippines. At some point, something's going to affect them. You can decide how that affects you. Is it a disaster for you or is it an opportunity for you to help someone who is struggling, someone who would have struggled otherwise if you weren't there to help put them back on their feet, give them a job, have them have income, and have them have a means of supporting their family and their community because of the job that you're providing and you're there to help them when disaster strikes. So the Philippines is the most susceptible country in the world to tropical storms, to typhoons. But it doesn't have to be devastating to you, to the people that you hire. In fact, we rarely encounter problems because of it, but it is something to be aware of.